Hey son, picture it now. 1956. A warm Tuesday evening in Glendale, California. You are pulling into the parking lot of a restaurant shaped like something from a fever dream. And above you, towering 30 feet into the smoggy California sky, stands a fiberglass boy in red and white checkered overalls. His name is Big Boy, and he is holding a hamburger the size of a briefcase. Tonight, we are diving fork first into something bigger than nostalgia, stranger than logic, and more American than a 4th of July barbecue in a Chevrolet. This is the story of the Big Boy Burger, the double-decker that built an empire, sparked 1,000 imitators, and quietly vanished from most of your memories like smoke from a backyard grill. If you are enjoying what we do here, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. We would also love to hear from you in the comments. And hey, the channel is now live on Spotify. Check the link in the description if you want to take this vibe with you on your commute or into sleep mode. No pressure, just a heads up. So let's set the table with a few questions. What did a drive-in burger taste like in 1957 when Eisenhower was president and gas cost 25 cents a gallon? How did a single sandwich shape the entire fast food industry before McDonald's even had a Filet-O-Fish? What happened when that burger became so famous it needed its own statue? And why did a recipe born in Glendale end up feeding half the Midwest, but not you? It is 1956 now. The neon hums. The parking lot smells like French fries and motor oil. A car hop in a paper hat is skating toward your window. And the Big Boy Burger, stacked high and dripping sauce, is about to make sense of everything. Let us start where it began. Glendale, California. Bob Wyan is 24 years old, broke, and running a 10-stool hamburger stand he bought for $300. The year is 1936. The Depression is still grinding people down, and Bob is trying to figure out how to sell more burgers. The stand is called Bob's Pantry. Nothing fancy. A counter, a grill, a few stools bolted to the floor. The kind of place where you could get a burger and a coffee for $0.25 and still have change left over. Bob works the grill himself. He knows his regulars by name. He knows what they order before they say it. But business is slow. Everyone is broke. And Bob is starting to wonder if he made a mistake. Then one night, a regular customer walks in. A musician. The kind of guy who plays late-night gigs and shows up hungry at odd hours. He sits down at the counter and asks Bob to make him something different. Not the usual single patty on a bun. Something bigger. Something that would stick. Bob thinks for a minute. Then he grabs 2 burger patties instead of 1. He toasts 3 bun pieces instead of 2. He stacks them. Lettuce on the bottom patty. Cheese on the top. A slather of Thousand Island dressing he mixes himself. He slides the plate across the counter and watches the musician take a bite. The reaction is immediate. The guy loves it. He tells Bob this is the best burger he has ever had. He comes back the next night and orders it again. Then his friends start showing up, asking for that big burger Bob makes. The one with 2 patties, the tall one. Bob realizes he has something. He puts it on the menu. He calls it the Big Boy. And within a year, it is outselling everything else in the restaurant. People are not just stopping by for a quick bite anymore. They are coming specifically for that burger. The double-decker. The one that feels like a meal and a half. What Bob Wyan did not know at the time was that he had just invented the template. The double-decker burger. 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese on a sesame seed bun. Sound familiar? That is because McDonald's would use almost the exact same formula 30 years later for the Big Mac. But in 1936, in a 10-stool diner in Glendale, Bob Wyan got there first. The burger worked because it made sense. It was not gimmicky. It was not trying to be fancy. It was just more. More beef, more flavor, more burger. And in 1936, when people were counting pennies and skipping meals, more felt like a gift. Bob did not have a marketing team. He did not run ads in the newspaper. He just made a good burger and let it speak for itself. Word spread the old-fashioned way. One customer told another. A guy brought his family. A family brought their neighbors. And soon Bob's pantry was packed every night. The Depression was still happening. Money was still tight. But people found a way to scrape together the coins for a big boy burger. Because it was not just food. It was a small luxury. A moment of abundance in a time that felt empty. That burger, stacked high and dripping sauce, was a quiet rebellion against scarcity. And it tasted like hope. The burger needed a name, and Bob Wien, standing in his tiny kitchen in Glendale, decided to call it the Big Boy. Not the double-decker, not the California Special. Big Boy. Simple. Friendly. Exactly what you would call a sandwich that felt like a meal. But the name did not come from the burger. It came from a kid. A 6-year-old boy named Richard Woodruff, who used to hang around the restaurant. He was a regular fixture at Bob's pantry. Chubby cheeks, baggy overalls, always smiling, always hungry. Bob thought he looked like the kind of kid who would appreciate a big burger, so he named it after him. Richard Woodruff became the face of the franchise without ever asking for it. Bob hired a cartoonist to sketch the boy. Overalls, checkered pattern, a burger in his hand the size of a hubcap. The drawing was perfect. Friendly, but not cutesy. Nostalgic, but not cloying. It looked like every kid in America, or at least the kid every parent wanted. That cartoon became a statue. Fiberglass, 30 feet tall in some locations, painted in glossy enamel that caught the sunlight and glowed under the neon at night. The Big Boy statue stood outside every restaurant like a sentinel. You could see it from the highway. You could spot it from 3 blocks away. It was not subtle. It was not supposed to be. The statue became more famous than the burger. People took photos with it. Families posed their kids next to it. Teenagers climbed it after football games and got yelled at by the manager. The Big Boy statue was not just advertising. It was a landmark. You gave directions based on it. Turn left at the Big Boy. Meet me at the Big Boy. You know, the one with the big statue. The character had a strange power. He was not intimidating, like a corporate logo. He was not slick like the Golden Arches. He was just a kid. A happy, well-fed kid holding a burger. And that made him trustworthy. He was not trying to sell you anything. He was just standing there, smiling, holding the thing he loved most. And you wanted to love it too. The mascot worked in ways Bob Wien never planned. It made the restaurant feel safe, family-friendly, the kind of place where you could bring your kids and they would not get bored. The kind of place where the food was good and the atmosphere was easy. No pretension, no pressure, just burgers and that big happy kid watching over the parking lot. Other restaurants had mascots. McDonald's had Ronald. Burger King had the King. But Big Boy had something different. He was not a clown. He was not royalty. He was just a boy. And that simplicity made him iconic. The statue became so recognizable that it transcended the brand. People who had never eaten at Big's Big Boy still knew the statue. It showed up in movies, in old photographs, in flea markets and antique stores where collectors paid thousands of dollars for an original fiberglass figure. The Big Boy statue became Americana. Bob Wien probably did not think much about legacy when he named a burger after a chubby kid in overalls. He was just trying to sell sandwiches. But he created something that outlasted the restaurants. Something that lived in memory even after the locations closed. A 30-foot fiberglass boy, frozen in time, holding a burger that promised everything would be okay. And for a while, in the parking lots of 1950s America, it was. So what made the Big Boy different from every other hamburger in America? It was not the beef. It was not the bun. It was the architecture. 2 patties, 3 bun pieces, lettuce, cheese, and a secret sauce that tasted like Thousand Island, but somehow better. The construction was specific, deliberate. You started with the bottom bun, toasted, slightly crispy on the edges. Then came the first beef patty, a 1/4 pound, cooked on a flat-top grill until the edges crisped and the center stayed juicy. On top of that, shredded iceberg lettuce. Not a leaf, not a chunk, shredded. Thin enough to wilt slightly from the heat of the patty, but still cold enough to add crunch. Then came the middle bun, the controversial piece, the part that made purists argue and architects nod in approval. It was not decorative. It served a function. It absorbed the sauce. It created a barrier between the 2 patties so the flavors stayed distinct. It gave the burger structure. Without that middle bun, the whole thing collapsed into a mess. With it, you could hold it. You could bite through it. You could eat it like a civilized person. On top of the middle bun, the sauce. That orange-pink blend that no one could quite replicate at home. Officially, it was Thousand Island dressing. Mayonnaise, ketchup, sweet pickle relish, a little vinegar, a little sugar. But every Big Boy location seemed to have its own ratio. Some were sweeter, some were tangier, some had a little mustard mixed in. The sauce was never quite the same twice, and that was part of the charm. Then the second patty, same size as the first, same char on the edges, same juicy center. And on top of that, a slice of American cheese. Not cheddar, not Swiss. American. The kind that melted into a glossy sheet and stuck to the beef like it belonged there. The cheese was not optional. It was structural. It held the top bun in place. And finally, the crown. The top bun. Toasted like the others. Shiny from the butter. Dusted with sesame seeds that you would find in your lap later. The top bun was the finishing touch. The seal. The moment the burger became complete. The whole thing stood about 4 inches tall. Taller than a regular burger. Shorter than a hero sandwich. Just the right height to feel impressive without being impossible. You could not eat it with one hand. You needed both. You had to commit. And when you bit down, you got everything at once. Beef, cheese, lettuce, sauce, bun. All in one bite. All balanced. All perfect. The burger weighed close to 3/4 of a pound when fully assembled. It was filling. Not in the way modern fast food is filling, where you feel sluggish and regretful 20 minutes later. It was satisfying. The kind of full that felt earned. You ate a Big Boy burger and you did not need to eat again for hours. It was a meal. Not a snack. Not a side. A meal. The beauty of the Big Boy burger was that it was not trying to be gourmet. It was not trying to be fancy. It was just trying to be more burger. And it succeeded. The double-decker format became the blueprint. Every burger chain that came after borrowed from it. Stacked patties, special sauce, the middle bun. Big Boy did it first. And for a long time, Big Boy did it best. Bob's Big Boy in Glendale was not just a restaurant, it was a destination. The building itself became part of the experience. Googie architecture, sharp angles, glass walls, neon signs glowing like something from a science fiction movie. And that statue, that enormous fiberglass boy. Googie was the style of the future as imagined in the 1950s. Sweeping roof lines, geometric shapes, starbursts and boomerangs, buildings that looked like they could take off and fly to the moon at any moment. Bob's Big Boy embraced it fully. The restaurant looked more like a spaceship than a diner. And that was the point. The Glendale location was the flagship, the original, the one that set the standard for every big boy that came after. It sat on a corner lot, visible from every direction. The neon sign towered above the building, red and white letters spelling out Bob's Big Boy in a font that screamed 1950s optimism. At night, the whole building glowed. Inside, the design was just as intentional. Vinyl booths in red and white, chrome accents everywhere, Formica tables that reflected the light, a long counter where you could sit and watch the cooks work the grill. The kitchen was open, not hidden in the back. You could see your burger being made. You could smell the beef hitting the griddle. You could hear the sizzle. The layout was designed for volume. Big Boy was not a sit-down-and-linger kind of place. It was efficient. Booths turned over quickly. Orders came out fast. The staff moved with purpose, but it never felt rushed. It felt lively, energetic, the kind of place where something was always happening. The parking lot was as important as the dining room, maybe more important, because Bob's Big Boy in Glendale was a car culture restaurant. You pulled in, you parked. And if you were lucky, a car hop skated over and took your order right there. You did not have to get out of the car. You could sit in your Chevy Bel Air with the radio on and eat a burger on a tray hooked to your window. Teenagers loved it. Bob's Big Boy became the spot. Friday nights, the parking lot filled with hot rods and custom cars. Kids cruised through, showing off their rides. They ordered burgers and fries and sat in their cars talking and laughing and watching other cars roll in. It was not just dinner. It was a scene. Families came too. Sunday afternoons, parents brought their kids. They sat in the booths and ordered combo platters and strawberry shakes. The kids stared at the Big Boy statue through the window and begged to go outside and stand next to it. The parents said yes, because the burger was good and the prices were fair and everyone left happy. Bob's Big Boy in Glendale became famous, not just locally, nationally. People traveling through California made a point to stop, just to see it, just to say they ate at the original. It was not a chain yet. It was the place, the one that started it all. The building still stands today. It is a historic landmark now, preserved, protected. You can still eat there. The menu is mostly the same. The burgers still come with that sauce. The booths are still vinyl. The neon still glows. And the statue still stands outside, holding that oversized burger frozen in 1956, waiting for you to pull in and remember what it felt like when a hamburger was the most exciting thing on the road. You did not go inside, not at first. You pulled into the parking lot, rolled down your window, and waited. A car hop, usually a teenage girl in a paper hat and bow tie, skated over to your car with a tray and a smile. The car hop was the face of Big Boy, not the manager, not the cook. The girl on roller skates balancing a tray of burgers and shakes while weaving through parked cars. She was the one you remembered. She was the one who made the whole thing feel special. She wore a uniform, white blouse, black bow tie, a paper hat that somehow stayed on even when she spun around to dodge a car backing out. And the skates, always the skates. Four-wheeled metal skates with leather straps that laced up to her ankles. She glided across the asphalt like she was born on wheels. You placed your order through the window. She wrote it down on a pad. No computer, no screen, just a pencil and paper and her memory. She skated back to the kitchen, clipped the order to a wheel, and watched it spin into the hands of the cook. Then she skated back out to check on other cars. She never stopped moving. When your food was ready, she loaded it onto a metal tray. The tray was heavy. Burgers, fries, onion rings, shakes in tall glasses with straws already inserted. She balanced it all on one hand and skated back to your car. She hooked the tray onto your window. It hung there, wobbling slightly, but never falling. That tray was engineered. It had a hook that fit perfectly onto the edge of the rolled-down window. It was stable, secure. You could eat off it without worrying it would tip. The food came hot. The burgers were wrapped in paper, but still warm to the touch. The fries were crispy. The shakes were thick enough that you had to suck hard on the straw just to get them moving. Everything tasted better in the car. Maybe it was the novelty. Maybe it was the setting. Or maybe it was just that the food was good and the experience was exactly what it promised to be. You ate in your car with the windows down and the radio on. You watched other cars pull in and out. You watched the car hops skate back and forth, trays balanced, never missing a beat. You finished your burger and left the tray on the window. The car hop came back, unhooked it, and skated away. You did not have to get out. You did not have to clean up. You just ate and left. The car hop worked for tips. The pay was low, $1 an hour, maybe less. But the tips added up, especially on Friday and Saturday nights when the lot was full and the cars kept coming. A good car hop could make more in tips than she did in wages. She worked fast. She smiled. She remembered faces. She knew the regulars and what they ordered. She made people feel seen. It was hard work. The skates were heavy. The trays were awkward. The asphalt was uneven. And the weather did not care. Rain, heat, wind. The car hops skated through it all. They wore jackets in the winter and sweated through their blouses in the summer. They smiled anyway, because the job was not just about delivering food. It was about being part of the show. The car hop era did not last. By the 1970s, most big boy locations had phased them out. It was cheaper to have people walk inside and order at a counter. Faster, too. But something was lost. The car hops were not just workers. They were performers. They turned dinner into an event. And when they disappeared, Big Boy became just another restaurant. The magic faded. The parking lots got quieter. And the memory of a girl on skates balancing a tray and a smile became one more thing we used to have and do not anymore. Every region of America has tried to claim the Big Boy sauce as their own invention. Michigan says it was theirs. Ohio swears they perfected it. California rolls its eyes and points to Bob Wien's original 1936 recipe. The truth is, the sauce was never really secret. It was Thousand Island dressing, or at least a version of it. Mayonnaise, ketchup, sweet pickle relish, a little vinegar, a little sugar, maybe a dash of paprika or garlic powder depending on who was mixing it that day. Every cook had their own ratio. Every franchise had their own tweaks. But the base was always the same. What made the sauce special was not the ingredients. It was the application. Big Boy did not drizzle it on top. They did not serve it on the side. They spread it thick on the middle bun. That piece of bread soaked it up. It became part of the burger. Not a condiment, a layer. The sauce was sweet but not cloying. Tangy but not sharp. It had a richness from the mayonnaise and a brightness from the vinegar. The relish added texture. Little chunks of pickle that crunched when you bit down. It was balanced, and it was generous. Big Boy did not skimp. They slathered it on. People tried to replicate it at home. They bought Thousand Island dressing from the grocery store and wondered why it did not taste the same. Because it was not the same. Store-bought Thousand Island was thinner, sweeter. It did not have the same tang. It did not have the same body. Big Boy sauce was thicker, creamier. It clung to the burger instead of sliding off. Some locations added their own touches. Frisch's Big Boy in Ohio used a little more relish. Elias Brothers in Michigan made theirs slightly sweeter. Shoney's in the South added a hint of mustard. The variations were subtle. You would not notice unless you ate at multiple locations and paid attention. But the differences were there, and locals swore their version was the best. The sauce became iconic. Not just at Big Boy, it influenced every burger chain that came after. McDonald's Big Mac sauce is basically Big Boy sauce with a different name. Burger King's special sauce, In-N-Out spread. They are all variations on the same theme. Mayonnaise-based, tangy, sweet, pickle relish for texture. Big Boy did it first, and everyone else followed. But here is the thing. The sauce only mattered because the burger was good. You can put the best sauce in the world on a bad burger, and it is still a bad burger. Big Boy started with quality beef. They cooked it right. They built the burger with care. The sauce was the finishing touch, not the foundation. And that is why it worked. People miss the sauce. You can still buy bottles of it online. Some grocery stores in the Midwest carry it in the condiment aisle. It is not quite the same. It never is. Because the sauce was only part of the equation. The real magic was the whole experience. The burger, the bun, the way it was assembled, the way it was served. The sauce was just one piece, but it was the piece people remembered. If you want to taste it again, you can try. Mix mayonnaise, ketchup, and sweet pickle relish. Add a splash of vinegar and a pinch of sugar. Stir it together and spread it on a burger. It will taste close. Close enough to trigger the memory. Close enough to take you back to a parking lot in 1967 with the windows down and the radio on and a Big Boy burger in your hands. The sauce was never really secret. It was just good. And sometimes that is enough. Bob Wien did not plan to build an empire. He just wanted to sell burgers. But by the late 1940s, other restaurant owners were noticing the lines outside Bob's Big Boy in Glendale. They wanted in. Franchising was not new. But it was not common either. Most restaurants were independent, local, owned by one person or one family. The idea of replicating a concept across multiple locations with different owners but the same branding was still experimental. Bob Wien made it work. The first franchise outside of California opened in 1946. Dave Frisch in Cincinnati. Frisch saw what Bob was doing and asked if he could bring Big Boy to Ohio. Bob said yes. He licensed the name, the mascot, the burger recipe, and the general concept. But he let Frisch run the operation his own way. That flexibility became the template for every franchise that followed. By 1950, there were a dozen Big Boy locations across the country. By 1960, there were hundreds, and by 1970, Big Boy was everywhere. California, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, West Virginia, Arizona, Kansas. Every region had its own franchisee. Every franchisee had their own territory, and every territory felt a little different. Bob Wien stayed in California and oversaw the branding. He made sure the mascot was used correctly. He enforced standards for the burger. But he did not micromanage. He trusted the franchise owners to know their markets, to adjust the menu, to set their own prices, to build their own relationships with customers. That trust allowed Big Boy to grow faster than most chains. The franchise model also created loyalty. The owners were not corporate employees. They were entrepreneurs. Small business owners who had invested their own money and their own reputations. They cared. They showed up. They worked the floor. They knew the regulars. And that personal touch made Big Boy feel local, even when it was part of a national brand. But the flexibility that fueled the growth also created fragmentation. Big Boy was not one unified chain. It was a network of semi-independent operators using the same name. That meant inconsistency. A big boy in Detroit did not feel like a big boy in Phoenix. The menu was different. The prices were different. Even the burgers tasted slightly different because each kitchen had its own version of the sauce. Some franchise owners thrived. They expanded. They opened multiple locations. They became wealthy. Others struggled. They could not compete with the fast food chains that were emerging in the 1960s. McDonald's, Burger King, chains that were faster, cheaper, and more ruthlessly efficient. Big Boy was still a sit-down restaurant. It required more staff, more overhead, more time. And as the culture shifted towards speed and convenience, Big Boy started to feel slow. The franchise agreements varied. Some were exclusive. Some were not. Some owners paid a percentage of revenue to Bob Wien. Others paid a flat fee. There was no central corporation controlling everything, no uniformity. And while that diversity made Big Boy interesting, it also made it vulnerable. By the 1980s, the franchise network was fracturing. Some operators rebranded, some went independent, some sold out to competitors. Bob Wien had retired. The original vision was fading, and the empire he had built, accidentally, through handshake deals and trust, was splintering into pieces. But for a few decades, from the late 1940s to the early 1970s, Big Boy was one of the biggest restaurant chains in America. Not because it was centralized, not because it was efficient, but because Bob Wien had an idea and he let other people run with it. He franchised the dream. And for a while, the dream worked. Here's where it gets strange. Big Boy was not one chain. It was dozens. Each region had its own franchise operator, and each operator ran the show differently. The menu changed. The decor shifted. Even the burgers tasted different depending on where you were. In California, Big Boy was Bob's. Clean lines, googie architecture, the original vision. The burgers were the standard. 2 patties, sauce, lettuce, cheese, 3 buns. The menu was focused. Burgers, fries, shakes, a few sandwiches, breakfast items. Nothing excessive, just the classics done well. In Ohio, Big Boy was Frisch's, and Frisch's did not mess around. They expanded the menu, added a full breakfast lineup. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, hash browns. They introduced the breakfast bar. All you can eat for a few dollars. It became a Sunday morning ritual for families across the Midwest. Frisch's also tweaked the sauce, made it a little sweeter, a little thicker, and they added tartar sauce to the fish sandwich. Small changes, but enough to make Frisch's feel like its own thing. In Michigan, Elias Brothers dominated. They leaned into the family-friendly angle. Kids ate free on Tuesdays, coloring books at every table, a salad bar that rivaled full-service steakhouses. Elias Brothers also sold pies. Not just any pies, strawberry pies that became legendary in Detroit. Thick, sweet, topped with whipped cream. People drove across town just for a slice. Down south, Shoney's took the Big Boy name and ran with it in a completely different direction. Alex Schoenbaum started Shoney's in West Virginia in 1952 as a Big Boy franchise. But he had his own ideas. He added Southern staples, fried chicken, biscuits and gravy, sweet tea by the gallon. Shoney's eventually broke away from Big Boy entirely and became its own chain. But for years, it operated under the Big Boy umbrella, serving burgers alongside country ham. Out west, JB's Big Boy in Phoenix embraced the desert aesthetic. Adobe-style buildings, cactus gardens in the parking lot. The menu included Southwestern touches, green chili burgers, nachos, salsa instead of ketchup on the tables. It was still Big Boy, but it was Big Boy filtered through Arizona. Mark's Big Boy in Southern California was sleeker, more modern. They remodeled their locations in the 1970s with earth tones and wood paneling. They added a soup and salad bar. Wineless. Mark's tried to position itself as upscale casual, a step above fast food, but not quite fine dining. It worked for a while, until it did not. Every region had quirks. Some big boy locations had jukeboxes in the booths. Some had payphones by the bathrooms. Some had smoking sections that took up half the restaurant. Some banned smoking entirely. The differences were not just cosmetic. They reflected the culture of the place, the preferences of the owner, the expectations of the customers. This decentralization made Big Boy adaptable. It could survive in markets where a rigid corporate chain might fail. But it also made Big Boy confusing. If you grew up with Frisch's in Cincinnati and then moved to California, Bob's Big Boy did not feel the same. The burger was close, but the vibe was off. The menu was smaller. The experience was different. And that disconnect made it harder for Big Boy to build national brand loyalty. People did not think of themselves as Big Boy customers. They thought of themselves as Frisch's customers, or Elias customers, or Shoney's customers. The regional identity was stronger than the national one, and when those regional franchises started to struggle, there was no corporate safety net, no central brand to rally around. Just a network of independent operators trying to keep the dream alive in their own territories. The regional variations were Big Boy's greatest strength and its fatal weakness. Strength because it allowed the brand to adapt and thrive in different markets. Weakness because it prevented Big Boy from becoming the kind of monolithic force that McDonald's became. Big Boy was a patchwork, a quilt of different ideas stitched together under one mascot. And eventually the seams started to show. If you grew up in Ohio, Kentucky, or Indiana, your Big Boy was Frisch's. Dave Frisch opened his first Big Boy restaurant in Cincinnati in 1946, and it became a Midwest institution. Frisch's was Big Boy, but bigger, more ambitious. Dave Frisch did not just want to serve burgers. He wanted to serve everything. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. And he wanted to do it all day. So he expanded the menu far beyond what Bob Whelan ever imagined. The breakfast bar was the crown jewel. All you can eat, eggs scrambled to order, bacon crispy and hot, sausage links, hash browns fried in butter, pancakes stacked high, French toast dusted with powdered sugar, fresh fruit, yogurt, pastries, and coffee, endless coffee, refilled before your cup was even empty. Families came on Sunday mornings, after church, still dressed up. Kids squirming in their pews for the past hour, now finally free to pile their plates high with pancakes and syrup. Parents sipping coffee and reading the newspaper while the kids ate themselves into a sugar coma. The breakfast bar was not just a meal. It was a weekly ritual. Frisch's also perfected the tartar sauce. It came with the fish sandwich, but people asked for it on everything. Fries, onion rings, even burgers. It was tangy and thick with chunks of pickle. Homemade, or at least it tasted homemade, and it became one of those regional secrets. The thing you missed when you moved away. The locations were clean, well-maintained. The booths were reupholstered regularly. The bathrooms were spotless. The staff was friendly. Frisch's did not cut corners. Dave Frisch believed that if you took care of the details, customers would notice. And they did. Frisch's also stayed local. Even as the chain grew, it remained rooted in the Midwest. No national expansion. No attempts to conquer California or the East Coast. Just Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. That focus allowed Frisch's to stay consistent, to maintain quality, to build deep relationships with the communities it served. The Big Boy statue outside every Frisch's location became a landmark. You gave directions based on it. Turn left at Frisch's. Meet me at the Big Boy. Kids climbed on it when their parents were not looking. Teenagers posed with it for prom photos. It was part of the landscape, part of the culture. Frisch's survived when other Big Boy franchises folded. It adapted. It updated. it stayed relevant. Today, Frisch's is still operating, still serving that breakfast bar, still making tartar sauce. The Big Boy Burger is still on the menu. And the statue still stands outside, holding that oversized sandwich, reminding everyone who drives by that some things, if you take care of them, do not have to disappear. In Michigan, Big Boy meant Elias Brothers. They opened in 1952 and turned the double-decker into a Detroit staple. If you were a kid in the Motor City in the 1960s, a trip to Elias Brothers felt like a holiday. Elias Brothers understood something fundamental about family dining. Kids needed to be entertained, parents needed to relax, and everyone needed to eat without it feeling like a chore. So they built their restaurants around that principle. Every Elias Brothers location had a salad bar, not a small one, a massive, sprawling buffet of greens, toppings, and dressings. Iceberg lettuce, romaine, spinach, tomatoes, cucumbers, olives, onions, peppers, croutons, bacon bits, shredded cheese, ranch, Italian, Thousand Island, blue cheese. You could build a salad the size of a dinner plate, and people did. The salad bar was strategic. It kept kids busy. They loved building their own plates, piling on toppings, making a game out of it. And while the kids were occupied, parents could sit and breathe. The salad bar bought time, and in a restaurant full of families, time was valuable. Elias Brothers also had the best pies. Strawberry pies that became legend. Thick graham cracker crust. Sweet strawberry filling, topped with a mountain of whipped cream. The pie was massive. One slice could feed 2 people, but no one ever shared. You ordered your own slice, and you ate the whole thing, and you did not regret it. The locations were warm, inviting, wood paneling, soft lighting, booths big enough for a family of 6. The decor was not fancy, but it was comfortable. It felt like someone's dining room, a clean, well-kept dining room where you were always welcome. Elias Brothers leaned into promotions. Kids ate free on Tuesdays. Birthday kids got a free Sunday. Loyalty punch cards, coupons in the Sunday paper. They understood that in Michigan, where the auto industry shaped everything, value mattered. People worked hard. They counted their dollars. And Elias Brothers made sure they got their money's worth. The staff was local. Lifers. Women who had worked the same shift for 20 years. Men who started as dishwashers and became managers. They knew the regulars. They remembered birthdays. They asked about your kids. It was not corporate training. It was genuine. And it made Elias Brothers feel like home. When the auto industry collapsed in the 1980s, Michigan struggled. Factories closed, jobs disappeared, families moved away, and Elias Brothers felt the hit. Locations closed, sales dropped, but the brand survived. It downsized, it adapted, and it stayed rooted in Michigan. Because leaving would have meant abandoning the people who had kept it alive for decades. Today, there are still a handful of Elias Brothers locations scattered across Michigan. They still serve the Big Boy Burger. They still have the salad bar. And they still make that strawberry pie. It is not the empire it once was, but it is still there, still standing, still feeding families who remember when a trip to Big Boy was the highlight of the week. Down south, Big Boy wore a different name, Shoney's. Started by Alex Schunbaum in West Virginia in 1952, Shoney's became the southern face of the Big Boy empire. Alex Schunbaum was not from the South. He was a businessman from West Virginia who saw what Bob Wien was doing in California and thought he could bring it east. He bought the franchise rights for the South and opened his first location in Charleston. He called it Parquet. Then he rebranded to Shoney's, short for Schonbaum. Simple. Easy to remember. And it stuck. Shoney's kept the Big Boy Burger. The statue stood outside just like everywhere else, but everything around it changed. Alex understood that Southern customers wanted different things than California customers. They wanted bigger portions, sweeter tea, and they wanted comfort food that reminded them of Sunday dinner at Grandma's house. So Shoney's added fried chicken, crispy, golden, served with mashed potatoes and gravy. They added biscuits, fluffy, buttery, the kind you could pull apart with your hands and soak in sausage gravy. They added green beans cooked with bacon, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, sweet potato casserole. The menu became a Southern buffet disguised as a burger joint. The breakfast bar at Shoney's was legendary. Not just eggs and bacon. Grits, real grits, creamy and thick, served with butter and salt or sugar depending on your preference. Country ham, fried hard and salty, biscuits and sausage gravy, hotcakes with syrup, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Families came after church. Sunday mornings the parking lots were full. Men in ties, women in dresses, kids in their Sunday best squirming in the booths and begging to go to the dessert bar. Because Shoney's had a dessert bar. Soft-serve ice cream, toppings, hot fudge, caramel, whipped cream. You could build your own sundae and no one stopped you. The locations felt Southern. Wood paneling, warm lighting, booths upholstered in earth tones, carpet that muffled the noise of families and crying babies. The atmosphere was relaxed, unhurried. You could sit for an hour after your meal and no one rushed you. That was the Southern way. Hospitality over efficiency. Shoney's also stayed open late. 11 at night, midnight on weekends. It became the place to go after high school football games, after dates, after shift work at the factory. You could get a full meal at 10:30 on a Tuesday, and the staff smiled and served you like it was lunchtime. But Shoney's relationship with Big Boy was complicated. Alex Schoenbaum wanted independence. He wanted to build his own brand. And by the 1970s, he started to pull away. Shoney's location stopped using the Big Boy name. The statue came down in some places. The menu drifted further from burgers and deeper into Southern comfort food. In 1984, Shoney's officially ended its franchise agreement with Big Boy. They became their own chain, completely independent. The divorce was messy, legal battles, trademark disputes. But Shoney's survived. They expanded. At their peak in the 1990s, there were over 600 Shoney's locations across the South. But the split marked something larger. It showed that Big Boy's decentralized franchise model had limits. The regional operators were not partners. They were competitors. And when they grew strong enough, they did not need Big Boy anymore. Shoney's proved it. They took the blueprint, made it Southern, and left. Today, Shoney's is still around. Smaller now, a fraction of what it was. But the restaurants still serve biscuits and gravy, still have the breakfast bar, still feel like the South. And if you squint, you can still see the ghost of that Big Boy statue in the parking lot. The mascot is gone, but the legacy remains. Shoney's was Big Boy's Southern cousin, and like all good Southern families, they eventually went their own way. California had Mark's Big Boy. Phoenix had JB's. Wichita had its own version. By the 1960s, there were over 1,000 Big Boy locations scattered across America, each one a little different, each one serving that same towering burger. Mark's Big Boy was Southern California's answer to the original Bob's. Started by Marvin Marcus in the San Fernando Valley, Mark's took the Big Boy concept and made it sleeker, more modern, less googie, and more mid-century minimalist. The locations were clean, sharp angles, large windows, interiors that felt more like a nice restaurant than a burger joint. Mark's expanded the menu beyond burgers. They added prime rib, steak sandwiches, A full salad bar with choices that went beyond iceberg lettuce. They positioned themselves as upscale casual, a place where you could take a date, where businessmen could have lunch meetings, where families could celebrate a birthday without breaking the bank. The strategy worked. Mark's thrived through the 1960s and 70s. They opened dozens of locations across Southern California. The parking lots were full, the booths were packed, and the Big Boy statue stood outside every location, reminding everyone that this was still, at its core, a burger place. But Mark's got caught in the shift. By the 1980s, casual dining was changing. Chains like Chili's and Applebee's were offering similar menus with better marketing and more aggressive expansion. Mark's tried to compete. They remodeled. They updated the menu. They added alcohol. But it was not enough. One by one, the locations closed. By the early 2000s, Mark's Big Boy was gone. JB's Big Boy in Phoenix had a different story. Started by Jack Brown in the 1950s, JB's embraced the desert. The buildings had southwestern flair. Adobe-style exteriors, cactus gardens, interiors with warm colors and desert-themed decor. The menu reflected the region too. Green chili burgers, salsa on the tables, tortilla soup. JB's became a Phoenix institution. Locals loved it. Tourists stopped in. The locations were always busy. And unlike Mark's, JB's stayed focused. They did not try to be upscale. They stayed true to the burger. They kept prices reasonable. And they maintained quality. But even JB's could not survive forever. By the late 1990s, the franchise agreements expired. The Big Boy name disappeared from Phoenix. Some locations rebranded. Some closed. A few stayed independent and kept serving the same food under a different name. But the Big Boy era in Arizona was over. In Kansas, Wichita had its own Big Boy franchisee. Smaller operation. Fewer locations, but just as loved. The Wichita Big Boys were community gathering spots. High school kids went there after games. Families went there for Sunday dinner. The burgers were the same. The sauce was the same. The statue stood outside. But it felt local, because it was. Every region had its version, and every version had its own story. Some thrived. Some struggled. Some sold out. Some went independent. But for a few decades, they all carried the Big Boy name. They all served the double-decker burger. And they all contributed to a fragmented, complicated, beautiful mess of a franchise network that somehow worked. The decentralization that made Big Boy adaptable also made it vulnerable. When one franchise failed, it did not bring down the whole empire. But it also meant there was no empire to save it. No corporate headquarters swooping in with rescue capital. No brand managers enforcing consistency. Just independent operators doing their best in their own markets. By the 2000s, most of the regional Big Boys were gone. Mark's, JB's, the Kansas locations, dozens of others. Some rebranded, some closed. A few survived under new names. But the Big Boy network that once stretched across America had shrunk to a handful of holdouts. Mostly in the Midwest. Mostly holding on to something that felt increasingly like the past. The Big Boy burger was the star. But it was not alone on the menu. Walk into any Big Boy restaurant in 1965, and you would find a full-service diner lineup. Breakfast started early. 6 in the morning at most locations. Eggs any style. Bacon or sausage. Hash browns fried crispy on the flat top. Toast. White or wheat. Buttered and cut diagonally. Pancakes stacked 3 high. French toast dusted with powdered sugar. Omelets stuffed with cheese, ham, peppers, onions. And coffee. Endless coffee in white ceramic mugs that the waitress refilled before you even noticed it was low. The breakfast crowd was different from the lunch crowd. Quieter, regulars, men in work clothes heading to the factory, women meeting friends before shopping, retirees reading the newspaper and stretching 1 cup of coffee into an hour. Breakfast at Big Boy was not rushed. It was the calm before the day started. Lunch brought the burger crowd. But not everyone ordered the Big Boy. There were alternatives. The hamburger, single patty, simple, cheaper, the cheeseburger. Same thing with a slice of American cheese. The fish sandwich, breaded cod on a bun with tartar sauce and lettuce. The chicken sandwich, fried or grilled depending on the location. Then there were the sandwiches, cold sandwiches, deli style, turkey, ham, roast beef, served on white bread with lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise. They came with chips, not fries, just a handful of potato chips on the side. The sandwiches were not fancy, but they were cheap, and they filled the gap for people who wanted lunch but did not want a burger. Dinner was where Big Boy tried to be more than a burger joint. Some locations added entrees, fried chicken, pot roast, meatloaf with gravy, spaghetti with marinara sauce, and a side of garlic bread. These were not gourmet meals, but they were home-style, comfort food, the kind of thing your mom made on a weeknight. The salad bar became a fixture in the 1970s. Not every location had one, but the ones that did made it a centerpiece. A long buffet table with sneeze guards, iceberg lettuce in a big metal bowl, toppings in smaller bowls, tomatoes, cucumbers, shredded carrots, croutons, bacon bits, cheese, and dressings, ranch, Italian, blue cheese, Thousand Island. You could build a salad as big as your plate. And people did. The soup offerings were simple. Tomato, chicken noodle, vegetable, chili, served in white bowls with crackers on the side. Nothing fancy, but hot and filling. Soup and salad became a lunch combo. Cheap, light, popular with the office crowd. Sides were standard diner fare. French fries, thin cut, crispy, salted, onion rings, thick battered rings fried golden, coleslaw, creamy and sweet, cottage cheese, a scoop on the side of your burger for reasons no one could explain but everyone accepted. And then there were the shakes, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, made with real ice cream, thick enough that the straw stood straight up, served in tall glasses with whipped cream on top and a cherry. The shakes were not a side. They were an event. You ordered one when you wanted to treat yourself, when you had time to sit and enjoy it. The menu was not trying to be innovative. It was trying to be reliable, familiar, the kind of food you did not have to think about. You knew what you were getting, and you got it every time. That consistency was part of the appeal. Big Boy was not an adventure. It was a safe bet. And in the chaos of daily life, sometimes a safe bet was exactly what you needed. Big Boy restaurants took dessert seriously, not just an afterthought, not just pie sitting under glass. Dessert at Big Boy was an event. Every location had a dessert case, right by the register, glass-fronted, refrigerated, lit from above so everything inside glowed. You could see it from your booth. You could see it when you walked in. And by the time you finished your burger, you had already decided what you were ordering. Pies were the foundation. Apple, cherry, lemon meringue, chocolate cream, coconut cream, pecan, pumpkin in the fall. The pies were not made in-house. Most locations bought them from a supplier. But they were good. The crusts were flaky. The fillings were sweet. And the slices were generous. You could share, but you did not. The strawberry pie was the standout, especially at Elias Brothers in Michigan. Thick graham cracker crust, fresh strawberries in a glossy red glaze, topped with a mountain of whipped cream. The pie was massive. One slice could feed 2 people. Could, but never did. You ordered your own. You ate the whole thing. And you did not feel guilty because it was Big Boy and dessert was part of the experience. Hot fudge cake was another signature. Warm chocolate cake, served in a bowl, topped with vanilla ice cream, drenched in hot fudge sauce. The fudge was thick and rich and melted the ice cream on contact. You ate it with a spoon, slowly, savoring every bite. It was indulgent, decadent, and worth every calorie. Sundaes came in multiple sizes, small, medium, large. The large was absurd. 3 scoops of ice cream, your choice of toppings, hot fudge, caramel, strawberry, pineapple, whipped cream, nuts, a cherry on top. The sundae arrived in a tall glass. You needed 2 hands to lift it, and by the time you finished, you were full, uncomfortably full, but satisfied. Some locations had soft-serve machines, self-serve. You could build your own cone, vanilla, chocolate, swirl. The machine was always by the dessert bar. Kids loved it. They filled their cones too high. The ice cream toppled over. Parents sighed and grabbed napkins. It was chaos. But it was fun chaos. Milkshakes were thick, made with real ice cream, blended until smooth, but still dense. You had to suck hard on the straw to get anything through. Chocolate, vanilla strawberry, sometimes banana, sometimes peanut butter. The shakes came in metal mixing cups. The waitress poured your glass and left the cup on the table so you could refill it yourself. You always got more than 1 glass worth. It was the little things. Dessert was not optional at Big Boy. It was expected. You did not just eat dinner and leave. You stayed. You ordered pie or cake or a sundae. You sat a little longer. You let your meal settle. And you finished the evening on a sweet note. The dessert obsession was strategic. Dessert had high margins. It was cheap to make and expensive to sell. But it also created memory. People did not remember the burger as much as they remembered the strawberry pie, or the hot fudge cake, or that time they ate an entire large sundae by themselves and felt sick but happy. Dessert turned Big Boy from a meal into an experience. It gave you a reason to linger, a reason to come back, a reason to bring your kids and let them order their own sundae and watch them make a mess and smile anyway. Today, the dessert case is gone. From most places. The pies are smaller. The sundaes are standard. But if you ate at Big Boy in its heyday, you remember the dessert. You remember standing at the case, looking at the options, trying to decide. And you remember the taste. Sweet, rich, worth the wait. Dessert at Big Boy was not just food. It was the exclamation point at the end of the meal, and it made everything else taste better. By the 1970s, something was shifting. The shine was fading. The parking lots were not as full. The car hops were gone. Big Boy was still around, but it did not feel special anymore. The culture was changing, fast. The 1970s were not the 1950s. People were busier, both parents working, kids in activities, schedules packed. The idea of sitting down for a leisurely meal at a restaurant felt old-fashioned. People wanted speed, they wanted convenience, and Big Boy, with its sit-down service and full menus, was too slow. McDonald's had figured it out. No waiters, no plates. You ordered at a counter. You got your food in a bag, you ate in your car or took it home. The whole transaction took 5 minutes. Big Boy could not compete with that. Even with the car hops gone, Big Boy was still a sit-down experience. You waited for a table, you waited for a server, you waited for your food, and waiting felt like wasting time. The franchise model that had fueled Big Boy's growth was now working against it. There was no central leadership, no unified strategy. Each franchisee made their own decisions. Some updated their locations. Some let them decay. Some invested in new equipment. Some limped along with old grills and torn booths. The inconsistency was glaring. A Big Boy in Ohio felt different from a Big Boy in California. And not in a charming way, in a confusing way. The competition was getting fiercer. Not just McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Jack in the Box, chains that were leaner, faster, and better funded. They had national advertising campaigns. Big Boy had regional commercials that varied wildly in quality. They had clean, modern interiors. Big Boy had aging, googie architecture that was starting to look dated instead of retro. The menu had also become a problem. Big Boy tried to be everything. Burgers, sandwiches, breakfast, dinner, salad bar, dessert bar. The kitchen was overwhelmed. The staff was stretched thin, and the food quality suffered. The burgers were not as good as they used to be. The fries were soggy. The service was slow. Customers noticed. The economic pressures were mounting too. Food costs were rising. Labor costs were rising. Rent was rising. But Big Boy could not raise prices too much without losing customers to cheaper competitors. The margins were shrinking. Franchise owners were struggling. Some sold. Some closed. Some filed for bankruptcy. The cultural relevance was fading. Big Boy had been cool in the 1950s and 60s. Teenagers cruised the parking lots. Families made it a weekly ritual. But by the 1970s, kids were not hanging out at Big Boy anymore. They were at the mall, at the arcade, at each other's houses. Big Boy was where your parents went. And that was not a compliment. The googie architecture that had been futuristic in 1956 looked kitschy in 1976. The buildings were aging. The neon was flickering. The parking lots were cracked. Some locations tried to update. They covered the googie angles with wood paneling. They replaced the neon with backlit plastic signs. But the updates only made things worse. They erased the charm without adding anything new. The car hop era was over. Most locations had switched to walk-in service only. The parking lots felt empty. The energy was gone. What had once been a lively scene, full of cars and people and movement, was now just asphalt and faded paint. Big Boy was not dying. Not yet. But it was declining. Quietly, slowly. One closed location at a time. One disappointed customer at a time. The empire that Bob Whelan had built accidentally through handshake deals and good burgers was starting to crumble, and no one seemed to know how to stop it. Here is what happened. McDonald's did not invent the hamburger. They did not invent fast food. But they did invent speed at scale. 15-cent burgers, no waiters, no plates. You ordered at a window, grabbed a bag, and left. Ray Kroc saw what the McDonald brothers were doing in California and turned it into a machine, a system. Every location was the same. The burgers were the same. The fries were the same. The service was the same. You could walk into a McDonald's in New York or Texas or Oregon and know exactly what you were getting. That consistency was the genius. McDonald's was fast, ruthlessly fast. You pulled up to the drive-thru. You shouted your order into a speaker. 30 seconds later, you were at the window. 60 seconds after that, you were driving away with a bag of food. Total time, under 2 minutes. Big Boy could not touch that. Even without car hops, Big Boy required you to park, walk in, sit down, and wait. That was 10 minutes minimum. In the 1970s, 10 minutes felt like an eternity. The pricing was also a weapon. McDonald's burgers were cheap. 15 cents in the early days, 25 cents by the 1970s. A Big Boy burger cost over $1. For a family of 4, that difference added up. You could feed everyone at McDonald's for the price of 2 burgers at Big Boy. The math was simple, and families noticed. McDonald's also understood kids. Ronald McDonald, the playground. Happy Meals with toys. They turned dining into entertainment. Kids begged their parents to go to McDonald's. Not because the food was better, because it was fun. Big Boy had the statue. But a statue was just a statue. It did not give you a toy. It did not let you climb through tunnels and slide down slides. McDonald's made eating out feel like a reward. Big Boy made it feel like dinner. The marketing was everywhere. Television commercials, billboards, radio ads. McDonald's saturated the culture. You could not escape it. Big Boy had regional ads. Some good, some terrible, but nothing national, nothing unified. McDonald's built a brand. Big Boy had a network of franchises with inconsistent messaging. The efficiency extended to the kitchen. McDonald's had it down to a science. Every burger was assembled the same way. Every fry was cooked for the same amount of time. The staff was trained to follow the system. No creativity, no variation, just execution. Big Boy still had cooks who made decisions, who tweaked recipes, who had good days and bad days. That humanity was part of the charm. But it was also a liability. Consistency beat charm when people were in a hurry. McDonald's did not need prime real estate. They built small buildings on cheap land. Drive-through only in some cases. No dining room, no overhead. Big Boy needed large lots, big buildings, full kitchens, dining rooms with booths and tables. The operational costs were higher. The break-even point was harder to reach. And as rents rose, Big Boy struggled while McDonald's thrived. The speed and convenience of McDonald's changed customer expectations. People got used to fast food being actually fast. They got used to paying less. They got used to consistency. And when they went to Big Boy and had to wait and pay more and deal with inconsistency, it felt like a downgrade. Even if the burger was better. Even if the experience was more personal. Speed and price won. Big Boy tried to compete. They streamlined menus. They cut staff. They added drive-through windows at some locations. But it was too little, too late. The model was fundamentally different. Big Boy was a sit-down restaurant trying to be fast food. McDonald's was fast food, purpose-built, optimized, relentless. The Big Mac launched in 1968. 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Sound familiar? It was the Big Boy Burger. Slightly modified, slightly cheaper, and backed by the McDonald's machine. The Big Mac became iconic. The Big Boy Burger became a memory. And that shift, more than anything, marked the end of Big Boy's dominance. McDonald's did not just compete. They absorbed the idea, repackaged it, and sold it better. And Big Boy never recovered. One of Big Boy's greatest strengths became its greatest weakness. All those regional franchises, all those different operators, all that local flavor. It made Big Boy feel personal. But it also made it fragile. The decentralized model worked when times were good, when customers were loyal, when competition was light. But by the 1980s, none of those things were true anymore. Customers were price-sensitive and impatient. Competition was brutal, and the regional franchises were on their own. Some operators tried to innovate. They updated menus. They remodeled locations. They ran local promotions. But without a national brand to back them up, the efforts felt scattered. A new menu in Ohio did not help Michigan. A remodel in California did not save Arizona. Each region fought its own battle, and most of them lost. The franchise agreements were expiring. Bob Wean had sold the Big Boy brand to Marriott in 1967. Marriott was not interested in burgers. They were a hotel company. They saw Big Boy as a real estate play, a way to acquire prime locations. They did not nurture the brand. They did not invest in marketing. They collected franchise fees and let the operators fend for themselves. As agreements expired, franchisees had a choice: renew and pay higher fees to a corporate parent that offered nothing in return, or walk away. Many walked away. They rebranded. They went independent. They kept the same menu, the same recipes, the same staff. They just dropped the Big Boy name. And without the name, the statue came down, the mascot disappeared, and the regional identity that had made Big Boy special evaporated. Frisch's stayed. They renewed. They kept the Big Boy name, but even Frisch's started to feel like its own thing. The connection to the larger Big Boy network was theoretical. They operated independently. They made their own decisions. For all practical purposes, Frisch's was Frisch's. The Big Boy name was just a label. Elias Brothers struggled. The auto industry collapse in Detroit hit them hard. Customers disappeared. Sales dropped. Locations closed. They tried to hold on. They cut costs. They downsized. But the regional identity that had been their strength, that deep connection to Michigan, could not save them when Michigan itself was falling apart. Shoney's left entirely. They ended the franchise agreement and became their own chain. The split was contentious. Legal battles over trademarks and territory. But Shoney's survived. They proved that the regional operators were strong enough to stand on their own, which meant they did not need Big Boy. And if they did not need Big Boy, what was Big Boy? Mark's folded. JB's folded. Dozens of smaller operators folded. The Big Boy network that had once stretched coast to coast shrank to a handful of holdouts, mostly in the Midwest, mostly struggling. The loss of regional identity hurt in unexpected ways. Big Boy had never been a monolith. It had been a patchwork, and that patchwork had created loyalty. People did not love Big Boy. They loved their Big Boy. Frisch's, Elias, Shoney's. When those regional identities disappeared, the loyalty disappeared too. There was no Big Boy to rally around, no national brand to defend, just memories of what used to be. A burger that used to taste better, a restaurant that used to feel special, a statue that used to stand outside but was gone now, taken down, sold to a collector, or left to rot in a storage yard somewhere. The franchise model that had allowed Big Boy to grow without corporate control also meant there was no corporate control to save it. No one was steering the ship. No one was making strategic decisions. No one was fighting for the brand. It just drifted, fragmented, faded, and eventually, for most of America, disappeared. Even as Big Boy faded, it never fully disappeared. People who grew up with it remembered, not just the food, the whole experience. They remembered the statue, that big fiberglass boy in checkered overalls, the way it towered over the parking lot, the way you could see it from the highway, the way it made you feel like you were somewhere special, even though it was just a burger joint. They remembered the car hops, the girl on roller skates, the tray hooked to the window, eating in the car with the windows down and the radio playing, the smell of fries and burgers mixing with the summer air, the way it felt like freedom. They remembered the burger, the way it was stacked, the sauce, the way the middle bun soaked up the flavor, the way it was too tall to bite through cleanly, so you had to squish it down, the way it tasted exactly the same every time, until it did not. Until the quality slipped and the magic faded and you realized you were chasing a memory. They remembered going with their families, Sunday dinners, birthday celebrations, the salad bar where they piled their plates too high, the dessert case where they pressed their faces against the glass trying to decide between pie and cake, the booths where they sat with their parents and siblings and felt like the world was simple and good. They remembered going with friends. High school, after the game, after the dance, piling into a booth and ordering fries and shakes and talking until the waitress asked them to leave because other customers were waiting. The way Big Boy was not just a restaurant. It was a place to be, a place to gather, a place that mattered. The nostalgia was specific. It was not about burgers in general. It was about Big Boy burgers. It was not about diners in general. It was about Big Boy. The name, the statue, the memory of what it felt like to be young and hungry and happy. People collected Big Boy memorabilia. The statue was the prize. Original fiberglass figures sold for thousands of dollars, tens of thousands if they were in good condition. Collectors competed at auctions. They restored the statues, repainted them, displayed them in garages and front yards and man caves. The statue became art, Americana, a symbol of a time that felt simpler even if it was not. Old menus sold on eBay, postcards from Big Boy locations that no longer existed, matchbooks, ashtrays, anything with the logo. People wanted to hold a piece of it, to prove it was real, to prove they were not imagining how good it used to be. Online forums popped up. People swapped stories, compared notes, debated which regional franchise was best, shared photos of old locations, mourned the ones that had closed, celebrated the ones that survived. The internet gave Big Boy a second life, not as a restaurant, as a memory, a shared cultural touchstone. The nostalgia was bittersweet, because remembering Big Boy meant acknowledging it was mostly gone, that the thing you loved had faded, that you could not go back. Not really. A few locations still existed. You could still get the burger. But it was not the same. The building was different. The staff was different. You were different. Older. And nostalgia, by definition, is about wanting something you can no longer have. But the fact that people remembered at all meant something. It meant Big Boy had mattered. It meant the experience had been real. It meant the burger, the statue, the car hops, the whole thing had left a mark. And in a world where most things are forgotten, being remembered is a kind of immortality. Big Boy became collectible. Those fiberglass statues that once stood outside every restaurant, people wanted them, badly. The statues were not easy to come by. When a Big Boy location closed, the statue was supposed to be returned to the franchise operator or destroyed. Destroyed. As if a 30-foot fiberglass boy was just garbage. But not all of them were. Some were abandoned, left in storage yards, forgotten in warehouses, and collectors hunted them down. A pristine original statue could sell for $20,000, sometimes more. The price depended on condition. Original paint, no cracks. All the fingers intact. The checkerboard pattern clean and bright. Collectors were picky. They wanted authenticity. They wanted museum quality, and they were willing to pay for it. Restoring a statue was an art form. The fiberglass had to be repaired, cracks filled, chips sanded smooth. Then the statue had to be repainted. The red had to be the right shade of red. The checkered pattern had to be precise. The skin tone had to match the original. It was painstaking work, and if you got it wrong, the statue looked fake, like a cheap replica. And the value plummeted. Some collectors displayed their statues outside, in their yards, in front of their businesses. One guy in Michigan put his statue on the roof of his house. It became a landmark. People drove by just to see it. The neighbors complained. The city tried to make him take it down. He fought them. He won. The statue stayed. Other collectors kept their statues inside, in garages, in basements, in climate-controlled storage units. They treated them like fine art, covered them when not on display, rotated them to prevent sun damage, insured them. The statues were not toys. They were investments. But it was not just statues. People collected everything. Menus from the 1950s, postcards, matchbooks, salt and pepper shakers shaped like the Big Boy mascot, plates, mugs, ashtrays, anything with the logo. Vintage Big Boy merchandise sold on eBay for hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands if it was rare. The most obsessive collectors built shrines, entire rooms dedicated to Big Boy, walls covered with framed menus and photos, shelves lined with salt shakers and mugs, and in the center, the statue, the crown jewel, the thing that made it all real. Some collectors had never eaten at Big Boy. They were too young, or they lived in a region where Big Boy never existed. But they loved the aesthetic, the googie architecture, the mid-century design, the fiberglass mascot. Big Boy became a symbol of an era they romanticized. The 1950s, post-war America, optimism and prosperity in chrome. Others collected because they remembered. They had eaten at Big Boy as kids, and owning a piece of it, a menu or a mug, or if they were lucky, a statue, was a way to hold on to that memory, to make it tangible, to prove it had been real. Collector conventions started happening, small at first. 12 people in a hotel conference room, showing off their collections, trading items, swapping stories. Then they grew. Hundreds of people, vendors selling memorabilia, auctions for rare pieces, guest speakers who had worked at Big Boy, historians who studied the franchise. The conventions became pilgrimages. The collector culture kept Big Boy alive in a strange way. Not as a restaurant, as an artifact, a relic of the past that people cherished and preserved. The statues that once advertised burgers now stood as monuments, not to food, to memory, to a time when things felt simpler, when a burger was just a burger and a statue was just a statue, and both of them meant something. Let us be clear about something. The Big Mac did not invent the double-decker burger. Big Boy did. By 1967, when McDonald's finally added the Big Mac to the menu, the Big Boy burger had been around for 31 years. The similarities were not subtle. 2 beef patties, 3 pieces of bun, special sauce, lettuce, cheese. The architecture was identical. The only real differences were the pickles and onions on the Big Mac and the slightly different sauce recipe. But the concept, the double-decker format, the middle bun, that was all Big Boy. Jim Delegati created the Big Mac. He was a McDonald's franchisee in Pittsburgh, and he did not hide where the idea came from. He saw the Big Boy burger. He liked it, and he thought McDonald's should have something similar. So he built one. He tested it in his Pittsburgh locations. It sold. He pitched it to corporate. They said yes, and the Big Mac was born. McDonald's did not steal the Big Boy burger. They adapted it. They made it faster, cheaper, more consistent. They stripped away the sit-down service and the car hops and the ceramic plates. They put it in a box. They sold it through a window, and they marketed it relentlessly. The Big Mac sauce was different from Big Boy sauce. Slightly. It was Tangier, less sweet. But the base was the same. Mayonnaise, ketchup, pickle relish, vinegar. The recipe that Big Boy had been using since 1936. McDonald's tweaked it, gave it a name, and made it famous. The middle bun was the key. That third piece of bread, that structural innovation that kept the burger from collapsing. Big Boy had been using it for decades. McDonald's took it, and suddenly every burger chain wanted a double-decker with a middle bun. Burger King tried. Wendy's tried. They all tried. Because McDonald's proved it worked. But Big Boy had proved it first. The Big Mac became iconic in a way the Big Boy burger never did. Not because it was better, it was not. But because McDonald's had the reach, the advertising, the scale. They put the Big Mac in every McDonald's in America, then every McDonald's in the world. They made it synonymous with fast food, with America itself. Big Boy never had that reach. They were regional, fragmented, inconsistent. They could not compete with McDonald's national machine. So even though they invented the format, McDonald's got the credit, and the Big Boy Burger became a footnote, the original that everyone forgot. There was no lawsuit, no legal battle over intellectual property. You cannot patent a burger. You cannot copyright a sandwich. So McDonald's took the idea. They refined it, they scaled it, and they won. The irony is that the Big Mac probably saved the double-decker burger format. By the 1970s, Big Boy was fading. If McDonald's had not adopted the format and made it mainstream, the double-decker might have disappeared with Big Boy. Instead, the Big Mac became a global phenomenon, and the format lived on, just not with the name Big Boy attached. Some Big Boy loyalists were bitter. They saw the Big Mac as a ripoff, a cheap imitation. They insisted the Big Boy Burger was better. And maybe it was. But better does not always win. Faster wins, cheaper wins, more accessible wins. And McDonald's was all three. The Big Boy Burger still exists. At the handful of Big Boy locations that remain. You can still order it. It still tastes like it used to. More or less. But it is a niche item now, a regional specialty, a nostalgia play. The Big Mac is the standard, the benchmark, the burger everyone knows. What McDonald's took from Big Boy was not just a recipe, it was a template, a proof of concept. Big Boy showed that the double-decker format worked, that customers wanted more burger, that the middle bun was structurally sound. McDonald's learned from that. They optimized it, and they turned it into the most successful burger in history. Big Boy invented it. McDonald's perfected it. And history, as always, remembers the perfecter, not the inventor. Big Boy did not die. It just shrank. Today, there are still Big Boy restaurants scattered across America, mostly in the Midwest and California. Frisch's Big Boy is the biggest survivor, over 100 locations across Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. The restaurants are clean, updated. The breakfast bar is still there. The Big Boy Burger is still on the menu. The statue still stands outside. Frisch's figured out how to adapt without losing what made them special. They modernized the interiors, but kept the comfort. They streamlined the menu, but kept the favorites. They survived because they stayed true to their roots while acknowledging that the world had changed. Walk into a Frisch's today, and it feels familiar, but not frozen in time. The booths are newer. The lighting is better. The bathrooms are clean and handicap accessible. But the vibe is the same. Families still come after church. Regulars still sit at the same tables. The waitresses still refill your coffee before you ask. It is not 1965, but it remembers 1965. And that memory is enough. There are a handful of Big Boy locations left in California, most of them independent now. No longer part of a larger franchise network, just individual restaurants using the name, because they always have, because their customers expect it, because taking down the statue would feel like admitting defeat. Bob's Big Boy in Burbank is the crown jewel, the original location, opened in 1949, still operating, still serving the double-decker burger. The building is a historic landmark now. Googie architecture preserved and protected. The neon still glows. The parking lot still fills up on weekends. Classic car clubs meet there. Photographers shoot there. Tourists stop there. It is not just a restaurant. It is a museum that serves food. The menu at Bob's has expanded. They added avocado toast, quinoa bowls, vegan options, because it is California and you have to. But the Big Boy Burger is still there, unchanged. 2 patties, 3 buns, sauce, lettuce, cheese. The same recipe Bob Wien created in 1936. You can order it, you can eat it, and for a moment you are back in time. Michigan still has a few Elias Brothers locations, not many, a dozen maybe. They struggled through the auto industry collapse. They closed most of their restaurants. But the ones that survived are still there, still serving the strawberry pie, still offering the salad bar, still rooted in Detroit and the surrounding suburbs. They are smaller now, quieter, but they endure. The survival strategy for these remaining big boy locations is simple. Stay local, stay consistent. Do not try to compete with McDonald's or Burger King. Do not chase trends. Just be what you have always been. A place where people can get a good burger and feel at home. The economics are tight. These restaurants are not making anyone rich. The margins are thin. The competition is brutal. But they survive because they have loyal customers, people who have been coming for decades, people who bring their kids, their grandkids, people who would notice if the restaurant closed, and people who would mourn. Some of the surviving locations are run by second or third generation owners. The original franchisee retired or died. Their kids took over, or their grandkids. They could have sold, could have walked away, but they stayed. Because Big Boy is not just a business to them. It is a legacy, a family responsibility, a connection to the past. The surviving Big Boy restaurants are anachronisms, relics of an era that valued sit-down service and personal connection over speed and efficiency. They should not exist. The economics do not make sense. The cultural moment has passed. But they persist, stubborn, defiant, serving burgers and pies and coffee to people who remember when Big Boy was everywhere, and to people who are just discovering it for the first time. The survivors prove something important. That Big Boy was not just a fad, not just a product of the 1950s that died when the culture moved on. It was real. It mattered. And for the people who still go there, who still order the Big Boy burger and sit in the booths and look at the statue in the parking lot, it still matters. The empire is gone, but the idea survives. And sometimes that is enough. Some Big Boy locations transcended fast food and became cultural landmarks. The original Bob's Big Boy in Burbank, California, is one of them. The building opened in 1949. Designed by Wayne McAllister, a master of googie architecture, sharp angles, sweeping roof lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, neon everywhere. The building looked like a spaceship, like the future. And in 1949, that was exactly what people wanted to see. The location became famous immediately. It was on Riverside Drive, a main artery through Burbank. Everyone passed it. Everyone saw it. The neon sign glowed day and night. The statue stood guard in the parking lot. And inside, the restaurant buzzed with energy. Families, teenagers, celebrities from the nearby studios. Everyone ate at Bob's. By the 1970s, the building had become iconic. Not just in Burbank, nationally. It appeared in movies, television shows, commercials. Directors loved the look, the googie aesthetic, the retro-futuristic vibe. Bob's Big Boy became a character in Hollywood's version of Los Angeles, a symbol of mid-century optimism and car culture. Classic car enthusiasts adopted Bob's as their meeting spot. Friday nights became cruise nights, hot rods, custom cars. Vintage Chevys and Fords lined the parking lot. Owners showed off their rides, talked shop, ate burgers. The tradition started in the 1980s and continues today. Bob's parking lot on a Friday night looks like a time machine. Chrome and candy paint and engines rumbling. In 1993, the building was designated a California Point of Historical Interest. Official recognition that Bob's Big Boy was not just a restaurant, it was history, architecture worth preserving, a piece of the cultural landscape that deserved protection. The designation came with restrictions. The building could not be demolished. Major changes required approval. The Googie design had to be maintained. The preservation was not just symbolic. Bob's underwent a major restoration in 1997. The neon was rebuilt. The exterior was repainted. The interior was updated, but carefully, keeping the original layout, the original feel, the booths, the counter, the open kitchen. Everything that made Bob's was protected. Today, Bob's Big Boy in Burbank is a functioning restaurant and a living museum. You can eat there. You can sit in the same booths that were installed in 1949. You can order the same burger Bob Wien invented in 1936. And you can see the architecture that defined an era. Tourists come. Architecture students come. Film buffs come. Classic car owners come. And locals come. People who have been eating at Bob's for 50 years. People who brought their kids. Who now bring their grandkids. For them, Bob's is not a landmark. It is just their Big Boy. The place they have always gone. The place that has always been there. Other Big Boy locations tried to become landmarks. Some succeeded. The Big Boy in Norco, California became a biker hangout. Rows of motorcycles parked outside every weekend. Leather jackets and loud pipes. The restaurant embraced it. Put up motorcycle memorabilia. Welcomed the culture. It became their identity. A Big Boy in Roseville, Michigan, near Detroit, became a community hub. They hosted fundraisers, sponsored Little League teams, donated to local charities. The restaurant was not just a business, it was a neighbor. And when it finally closed, the community mourned. But Bob's in Burbank is the gold standard, the one that became more than a restaurant, more than a building. It became a monument, a reminder that architecture matters, that design can transcend function, that a burger joint, if done right, can become art. Walk into Bob's today and you feel it. The weight of history, the ghosts of 1,000 meals, the memory of what it felt like when Googie was new and the future felt bright. The building has outlived most of the people who built it, most of the people who ate there in its early years. But it stands, preserved, protected, still serving burgers, still glowing under neon, still looking like tomorrow, even though it is a monument to yesterday. Big Boy seeped into American culture in ways that had nothing to do with food, movies, TV shows, music, art. That fiberglass boy in checkered overalls became a symbol. The statue appeared in films constantly. Background shots of Los Angeles always seemed to include a Big Boy. It was visual shorthand. This is America. This is the West Coast. This is car culture and diners and the open road. Directors did not need to explain it. The statue did the work. Austin Powers in Goldmember featured a scene at Bob's Big Boy in Burbank. The Googie architecture, the neon, the statue. It was played for laughs. But it also acknowledged that Bob's was iconic, recognizable, a piece of the cultural furniture. Quentin Tarantino ate at Bob's. He set scenes in diners that looked suspiciously like Big Boy. The booths, the coffee, the casual Americana. Tarantino understood that diners were not just settings. They were characters. And Big Boy diners had personality. The statue showed up in music videos, punk bands, rock bands, hip-hop artists. The Big Boy mascot had a strange appeal. It was wholesome, but also kitschy. Innocent, but also ironic. It represented 50s nostalgia, but also capitalism and consumerism. Artists used it both ways. Photographers loved the statue. Street photographers, fine art photographers. The fiberglass boy became a subject, a muse. Something about the scale, the colors, the frozen smile. It photographed well. It told a story without words. Andy Warhol never painted the big boy statue, but he could have. It fit his aesthetic, mass-produced, corporate, American. Warhol painted Campbell's soup cans and Coca-Cola bottles. The big boy mascot was the same idea, an everyday object elevated to icon status through repetition and ubiquity. The punk and alternative scenes embraced big boy ironically, wearing vintage big boy shirts, collecting big boy memorabilia. It was a rejection of corporate branding that somehow involved corporate branding. The mascot was safe, wholesome, everything punk was not. And that made it funny, subversive. Skateboarders adopted big boy statues as landmarks, spots to meet, backgrounds for photos. The statue appeared in skateboarding magazines, videos. It became part of the visual language of skate culture. Not because skaters loved burgers, because the statue was there, visible, iconic. Television shows referenced Big Boy constantly. The Simpsons parodied it. Family Guy parodied it. Any show set in mid-century America or dealing with nostalgia eventually worked in a Big Boy reference. Sometimes subtle, a statue in the background, sometimes overt. A whole scene set in a thinly veiled Big Boy knockoff. Comic book artists used the Big Boy aesthetic. The statue appeared in backgrounds. The restaurant showed up as a setting. The mascot became visual texture, a way to signal time and place. This is America. This is the 50s or 60s. This is the world of diners and drive-ins. The Big Boy mascot also became a symbol of Americana abroad. In Japan, Big Boy restaurants thrived. The mascot was huge there, literally and figuratively. Japanese Big Boy locations were everywhere. The statue stood outside just like in America. But in Japan, it meant something different. It represented American culture, imported nostalgia, a fantasy version of the United States. The cultural presence of Big Boy outlasted the restaurants. You could find references to Big Boy in art and media long after most locations had closed, because the image had staying power. The statue, the logo, the whole vibe. It stuck in the collective memory. Big Boy became shorthand. For a time period, for a feeling, for an America that may or may not have ever existed, but felt real in retrospect. The statue represented optimism, abundance, simplicity, a time when a burger was just a burger and happiness was just a meal away. The pop culture legacy is strange. Big Boy was never the biggest chain, never the most profitable, but it became the most iconic because the mascot was perfect, the design was perfect, and timing was perfect. Big Boy hit at the exact moment when American car culture and diner culture were peaking, and the image burned into the culture, permanent, unforgettable, even after the burgers were gone. So why does any of this matter? Why spend time mourning a burger chain that peaked before Watergate? Because Big Boy was not just a burger chain. It was a piece of infrastructure, social infrastructure, the kind that holds communities together in ways no one notices until it is gone. Big Boy was a third place, not home, not work, somewhere else, a place where people gathered, where they saw neighbors, where they recognized faces, where they belonged without having to earn it. You just showed up, sat down, and you were part of something. That kind of space is rarer now. Fast food chains are transactional. You order, you eat, you leave. There is no lingering, no community, no connection. Big Boy was different. You could sit, you could stay, you could watch the room and feel like you were part of the rhythm of daily life. Big Boy also represented a specific moment in American history: post-war prosperity, the rise of car culture, suburbanization, the baby boom, the optimism of the 1950s. Big Boy was built for that moment. Drive-in service, family-friendly menus, affordable prices. It fit the culture perfectly. And when the culture changed, Big Boy struggled because it was so perfectly calibrated to a time that had passed. The franchise model the Big Boy pioneered became the blueprint for American business. McDonald's copied it. Burger King copied it. Every chain that came after learned from what Big Boy did. The idea that you could license a brand and a concept to independent operators who would run their own businesses under a shared name. That was Big Boy. They proved it worked. And the entire fast food industry was built on that foundation. Big Boy also proved that regional identity could coexist with national branding. Frisch's was Big Boy. Elias was Big Boy. Shoney's was Big Boy. But they were also their own thing. They adapted to their markets. They built local loyalty. They showed that you did not need rigid corporate control to build a successful brand. You just needed a good idea and people willing to execute it well. The double-decker burger itself mattered. It was innovation, not world-changing innovation, but cultural innovation. Big Boy looked at a hamburger and asked, "What if there was more? What if we stacked it? What if we added a middle bun?" And the answer was yes. People wanted more, and every burger chain that followed took note. Big Boy mattered because it was good. The burger was good. The experience was good. The memories were good. And in a world full of disposable experiences and forgettable meals, something that people remember 50 years later is worth noting, worth preserving, worth mourning when it fades. The decline of Big Boy also tells a story about what happens when efficiency beats quality, when speed beats experience, when national corporations beat local operators. Big Boy lost to McDonald's not because McDonald's was better, but because McDonald's was faster, cheaper, more scalable. The market rewarded efficiency. And Big Boy, with its sit-down service and regional variations, could not compete. But the loss is real. What replaced Big Boy is not better. It is just different. Faster food, less connection, no car hops, no statues, no memory. The meals are forgettable. The restaurants are interchangeable. And the culture is poorer for it. Big Boy mattered because it was human-scaled. The franchises were owned by people who lived in the communities they served. The staff were neighbors. The customers were regulars. There was accountability. There was pride. There was care. And when Big Boy disappeared, that care disappeared too. The statue mattered. That fiberglass boy holding a burger. He was not just marketing. He was a landmark, a point of reference, a piece of the landscape that people navigated by and remembered. When the statues came down, the neighborhoods lost something. Not just a restaurant, a marker, a memory. Big Boy mattered because it represents a version of America that we lost. Not a perfect version, not an idealized version, but a version where community spaces existed, where people gathered, where a burger was an event and a meal was a ritual. We can debate whether that version was better, but we cannot deny it existed, and Big Boy was part of it. A big part. And remembering that matters. If you ever ate at Big Boy, you remember the burger. Not perfectly, not every detail, but you remember the stack, the sauce, the way the bun gave in when you bit down. You remember how it looked, too tall to be practical, the layers visible from the side, beef, bun, beef, bun, the architecture of it, the way it made a single burger feel like feast just by being taller. The presentation mattered, and Big Boy understood that. You remember the first bite, the way you had to compress the burger with both hands, the way the sauce squeezed out the sides, the way all the flavors hit at once, beef and cheese and lettuce and sauce and bread. Nothing overpowering, everything balanced. The burger was not subtle, but it was harmonious. You remember the sauce, that tangy, sweet, creamy blend that was somehow more than the sum of its parts. You remember trying to figure out what was in it, guessing, asking, never quite getting the answer. The sauce was the secret, the thing that made the burger taste like Big Boy and nothing else. You remember the setting, the booth you sat in, the table sticky from syrup or soda, the noise of the restaurant around you, voices, silverware, the grill sizzling in the open kitchen, the smell of burgers and fries and coffee, the way it all blended into background comfort, the kind of environment where you could relax without thinking about it. You remember who you were with. Your parents, maybe. Your grandparents. Your friends. A first date. The people matter as much as the food. Because meals are not just about eating. They are about being together. And Big Boy was a place where being together felt easy. You remember the statue, looking at it through the window while you ate, or walking up to it afterward and standing next to it, for scale, feeling small, feeling like the statue was watching over the parking lot, protecting it, making it safe. You remember the ritual, the way going to Big Boy was a thing, a plan, an event, not every night, but often enough that it felt familiar. You knew what you were going to order before you walked in. You knew where you wanted to sit. You knew what to expect. And that predictability was comforting. You remember the taste lingering after, the way the sauce stayed on your fingers, the way you could still taste the burger an hour later, the way you felt full, satisfied, not stuffed, not sick, just content. The burger was filling without being heavy, and that balance was rare. You remember when it changed, when the burger did not taste quite right anymore, when the sauce was off, when the beef was not as good, when the magic started to fade. You did not want to admit it. You wanted it to be the same, but it was not, and you knew it, and that realization hurt. You remember when it closed, when you drove past and the parking lot was empty, when the sign came down, when the statue was gone. The absence was loud. You noticed. You mourned. Even if you had not eaten there in years, even if you had moved on, the loss registered. And you remember now, when someone mentions Big Boy, or when you see a photo of the statue, or when you taste Thousand Island dressing and it reminds you. The memory surfaces, not complete, not perfect, but real. You remember the burger, the sauce, the stack, the way it felt to be young and hungry and happy. And for a moment, you are back there, in the booth, with the people you loved, eating a burger that was too tall and too messy and absolutely perfect. That memory is what remains, not the franchise, not the empire, not the business model, just the memory of a good burger in a good place at a good time. And maybe that is the real legacy, not what Big Boy became, but what it was. A burger worth remembering, a place worth missing, a piece of your past that you carry forward. Still hungry, still hoping, still looking for something that tastes like it used to. Big Boy did not just create a burger, it created a template. And once that template was out in the world, everyone wanted a piece of it. The imitators came fast. Some were shameless. Some were creative. All of them owed something to Bob Wien's 1936 invention. The double-decker format became standard. Before Big Boy, hamburgers were simple. One patty, one bun, maybe some lettuce and tomato if you were fancy. Big Boy proved that stacking worked, that customers wanted more, that the middle bun was not just functional, but essential. And once that idea was out there, it spread like wildfire. McDonald's took it and made the Big Mac. We have covered that. But they were not alone. Burger King tried with the Big King. 2 patties, special sauce, the same basic architecture. It never caught on the way the Big Mac did. But it showed that even the biggest chains were following Big Boy's lead. Wendy's had the double, then the triple, then the Baconator. Stacking became the language of burgers, and Big Boy wrote the grammar. Regional chains got in on it too. In-N-Out had the double-double, 2 patties, 2 slices of cheese. No middle bun because In-N-Out did things their own way. But the concept was there. More beef, more flavor, more burger. That was Big Boy's legacy speaking through a different accent. White Castle never went double-decker. Their sliders were too small. The format did not translate, but they paid attention to what Big Boy was doing. The way Big Boy built customer loyalty. The way the mascot worked. The way regional identity could fuel a national brand. White Castle learned from that. They stayed small, stayed regional, and survived. Five Guys came decades later. But their whole business model was about more. More beef, more toppings, more fries. The ethos was Big Boy. Abundance, generosity, giving customers more than they expected. Five Guys never acknowledged the debt. But it was there, in the double patties, in the way the burger was built, in the whole philosophy of what a burger should be. The imitators were not just burger chains. Diners picked up the double-decker format. Local restaurants added it to their menus. Home cooks started making them. The idea that a burger could be an event, not just a sandwich, became embedded in American food culture. And that idea came from Big Boy. Some of the imitators were regional, local chains that saw what Big Boy was doing and adapted it to their markets. They did not franchise. They did not expand nationally. They just took the blueprint and made it their own. A double-decker burger with local ingredients, local branding, local flavor. Big Boy had shown it could work, and they proved it could work anywhere. The sauce became its own category. Every chain needed a special sauce, a secret sauce, a signature blend that set them apart. McDonald's had Big Mac sauce. Burger King had their sauce. In-N-Out had spread. Whataburger had their creamy pepper sauce. The idea that a burger needed more than ketchup and mustard, that it needed something unique, something memorable. That came from Big Boy. From that orange-pink blend that no one could quite replicate, but everyone tried. The copycat culture was not limited to food. The googie architecture that Big Boy embraced became a movement. Other restaurants copied it. Not just burger joints. Coffee shops, bowling alleys, car washes, gas stations, the sweeping roof lines, the geometric shapes, the neon. It became the visual language of mid-century America. And while Big Boy did not invent googie, they popularized it. They showed that a restaurant could be a destination just by looking cool. The fiberglass mascot trend exploded. Every chain wanted a mascot, a character. Something three-dimensional and larger than life. McDonald's had Ronald. Burger King eventually had the King. Bob's Big Boy had the boy. The mascot became a marketing essential, a way to create brand recognition that went beyond logos and slogans. Big Boy proved it worked, and the industry followed. Some of the copycats were international. Big Boy franchises opened in Japan, and Japanese entrepreneurs saw the model and adapted it. MOS Burger, Freshness Burger, chains that took American burger culture and made it Japanese. But the foundation was there. The double-decker, the sauce, the branding. Big Boy had exported the idea, and it took root in ways Bob Wien never imagined. The copycat culture was also a form of tribute. Every imitation acknowledged that Big Boy had done something right. That the double-decker burger was not just a gimmick. It was an improvement, a genuine innovation that made burgers better. The imitators were not stealing. They were learning. They were building on a foundation that Big Boy had laid. But the copycats also diluted the brand. When everyone has a double-decker burger, what makes Big Boy special? The answer was supposed to be quality. consistency, the original recipe. But as Big Boy's quality slipped and the imitators got better, that distinction faded. McDonald's Big Mac became the standard. Not because it was first, but because it was everywhere. And everywhere beats first almost every time. The copycat culture showed that Big Boy's ideas were bigger than Big Boy itself. The double-decker burger did not need Big Boy to survive. It thrived in other hands, under other names, in other markets. The idea had escaped. It had become public domain, part of the shared language of American food. And maybe that is a legacy in itself. Not that Big Boy survived, but that Big Boy's ideas survived. That every time someone bites into a Big Mac or a Double-Double or any stacked burger anywhere in the world, they are experiencing something Bob Whelan invented in 1936. They do not know it. They do not think about it. But the lineage is there. The DNA is there. Big Boy created something that outlived the restaurants, that outlived the brand, that became part of the culture itself. And in a strange way, that is immortality. Not the kind you can franchise, but the kind that lasts. Nostalgia is a powerful force, but it is a terrible business model, and Big Boy learned that the hard way. By the 2000s, the few remaining Big Boy locations were running on fumes and memories. The customers who came were not there for the burger. Not really. They were there for the feeling, the memory of what it used to be like. And you cannot build a sustainable business on that, not long term. The problem with nostalgia is that it does not scale. You cannot franchise a memory. You cannot replicate the feeling of being 12 years old and eating a Big Boy burger with your dad after Little League. That moment is locked in time, specific, personal. And when the restaurant tries to recreate it, the gap between memory and reality becomes painfully obvious. The remaining Big Boy locations tried to lean into nostalgia. They kept the decor retro. They kept the old menus. They displayed vintage photos on the walls, classic cars, old uniforms, photos of the restaurants in their heyday. It worked for the older customers, the ones who remembered. But it did nothing for younger people. To them, it just looked old, dated, not cool retro, just old. The economics were brutal. Operating costs kept rising. Food costs, labor costs, rent, insurance, utilities. But prices could only go so high before customers balked. A Big Boy burger in 2010 cost $7 or $8. You could get a Big Mac for $3. The value proposition did not make sense, unless you factored in the nostalgia. And nostalgia does not pay the electric bill. The locations that survived did so by diversifying. They were not just Big Boy restaurants anymore. They were event spaces. They hosted car shows, classic car nights, fundraisers for local charities. They rented out rooms for birthday parties and retirement dinners. The restaurant was the anchor, but the extras kept the lights on. Some locations tried to modernize. They updated the menu, added healthier options, salads, grilled chicken, vegetarian burgers. It made business sense. It broadened the customer base, but it also diluted the brand. People came to Big Boy for the Big Boy burger, not for a quinoa bowl. The modern additions felt like compromises, like the restaurant did not believe in itself anymore. The breakfast business saved some locations. Breakfast customers are loyal, habitual. They come every day. Same time, same order. And breakfast has better margins than lunch or dinner. Eggs are cheap. Pancakes are cheap. Coffee is cheap. The all-you-can-eat breakfast bars that Frisch's perfected became profit centers. Not huge profits, but steady, reliable. Enough to keep the doors open, The nostalgia economy also created a secondary market. Collectors buying big boy memorabilia, statues selling for thousands, vintage menus, old uniforms, anything with the logo. The restaurants noticed. Some of them started selling merchandise, t-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, replicas of the statue in miniature. It was not a lot of revenue, but it helped. And it reinforced the brand, turned customers into walking advertisements. But merchandise and breakfast bars were not enough. The core business was still burgers, and the burger business was dying. Fast food had won. Convenience had won. Speed had won. Big Boy's sit-down model felt antiquated. The car hops were gone. The experience was gone. What was left was just a burger. A good burger, but not good enough to justify the higher price and the longer wait. The franchise model that had built Big Boy was now killing it. The remaining operators were independent. No corporate support, no marketing budget, no economies of scale. They were on their own, competing against massive chains with national advertising and purchasing power that could negotiate lower prices on everything from beef to napkins. Big Boy could not compete on cost, and they could not compete on speed. So they competed on nostalgia, and nostalgia has limits. The real estate became more valuable than the business. The land that Big Boy restaurants sat on, prime locations, busy intersections, high traffic areas. Developers noticed. They made offers, generous offers, enough to let the owners retire comfortably, enough to make walking away feel like the smart choice. And one by one, the offers were accepted. The restaurants closed, the buildings were demolished, and condos or strip malls or chain pharmacies took their place. The last holdouts are running on love, not profit. Love for the brand, love for the history, love for the customers who still come. The owners could make more money doing something else, anything else, but they stay. Because closing feels like giving up, like admitting that an era is over, like erasing their own history. The economics of nostalgia are simple. Nostalgia brings people in the door, but it does not keep them coming back. Eventually, the memory fades. The customers age out. The younger generation does not care. And the restaurant is left with a choice: evolve or die. Big Boy chose nostalgia, and nostalgia chose slow decline. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a quiet fading. One closed location at a time, one lost customer at a time, until what remains is not a business. It is a monument to what was, to what will never be again. While Big Boy faded in America, it thrived in Japan. And not just survived, thrived, expanded, became a cultural phenomenon in ways it never quite achieved in its home country. Big Boy came to Japan in 1977, a franchise agreement between Bob Wien's company and a Japanese restaurant operator. The first location opened in Tokyo. The same mascot, the same burger, the same branding, but everything else adapted to Japanese tastes and culture. The Japanese Big Boy restaurants were cleaner, more polished. The service was impeccable. The staff wore uniforms that were crisp and perfect. The dining rooms were spotless. Every detail was attended to. This was Japan, where excellence in execution was expected, where half measures were unacceptable. Big Boy in Japan was what Big Boy in America had been in its prime, only more so. The menu expanded in ways American Big Boy never attempted. Teriyaki burgers, rice bowls, miso soup, green tea desserts. The double-decker burger was still there, still the signature item, but it was surrounded by options that made sense in Japan, that honored local ingredients and local tastes. The adaptation was not compromise, it was respect. The portion sizes were different, smaller, more reasonable. Americans wanted abundance. Japanese customers wanted quality and presentation. So the burgers were slightly smaller, The fries were in smaller portions. But everything was arranged beautifully, plated with care. The food looked like it mattered, because it did. The Big Boy mascot became huge in Japan, figuratively and literally. The fiberglass statues stood outside every location, just like in America. But in Japan, the mascot took on additional meaning. It represented American culture, post-war optimism, the American dream exported. Japanese families posed with the statue, took photos. The mascot was not just branding, it was a cultural bridge. Big Boy in Japan also became a family destination. Birthdays were celebrated there. School friends met there. Dating couples went there. The restaurants were social spaces, third places in a culture that desperately needed them. Japanese cities are dense. Apartments are small. People need places to gather outside of home and work. And Big Boy filled that need. The breakfast service was particularly popular. The Japanese Big Boy locations offered Western-style breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, bacon. It was exotic, different, a taste of America. And Japanese customers embraced it. The breakfast bars were legendary, all you can eat, meticulously maintained, fresh food constantly replenished. It was the American Big Boy breakfast bar perfected with Japanese precision. The company that operated Big Boy in Japan took it seriously. They invested. They maintained quality. They trained staff rigorously. They treated the brand with respect. In America, Big Boy had become fragmented, inconsistent, a patchwork of struggling franchises. In Japan, it was unified, professional, a real chain with real standards. By the 2000s, there were over 200 Big Boy locations in Japan, more than remained in America. The Japanese operation had surpassed the original. The student had become the master. And the irony was not lost on anyone. Big Boy had been born in California, perfected in the Midwest, and resurrected in Tokyo. The Japanese success showed what Big Boy could have been, what it should have been, if the American franchises had maintained standards, if they had invested in quality, if they had treated the brand as something worth protecting. Japan proved the concept still worked, that the Big Boy burger still had appeal, that the restaurants could still thrive. Just not in America. Not anymore. The cultural differences mattered. In Japan, chains are not viewed with the same suspicion as in America. There is no stigma around eating at a chain restaurant. Quality is quality. Whether it comes from a mom-and-pop shop or a national franchise does not matter. Big Boy in Japan was judged on execution, and the execution was excellent. The Japanese Big Boy also stayed true to the sit-down model. No drive-thrus, no rush. The restaurants encouraged lingering, taking your time, enjoying the meal and the company. This was counter to American fast food trends, but it aligned with Japanese dining culture. Meals are social, communal. Rushing is rude. The nostalgia factor worked differently in Japan. Japanese customers were not nostalgic for their own childhoods at Big Boy. They were nostalgic for an imagined America, a 1950s America that maybe never existed, but felt real through movies and music and cultural exports like Big Boy. The restaurants sold that fantasy, and Japanese customers bought it. Today, Big Boy in Japan is still going strong, still expanding, still serving the double-decker burger to customers who have never seen an American Big Boy location, who do not know the history, who do not know that in America, Big Boy is a fading memory. To them, Big Boy is just a good restaurant, a reliable choice, a place where the food is consistent and the service is excellent. The Japanese exception proves something important, that Big Boy's failure in America was not inevitable. The concept was sound. The burger was good. The brand had value. But execution matters. Investment matters. Treating customers with respect matters. Japan did all of that. America, by the 1980s, had stopped, and the results speak for themselves. Big Boy thrives in Tokyo and barely survives in Ohio. And that is the story of the Big Boy Burger, the double-decker that built an empire, shaped an industry, and quietly disappeared from most of America while leaving behind a 30-foot fiberglass boy and 1,000 fractured memories. Bob Wien made a burger in 1936. 2 patties, 3 buns. A sauce that was not quite secret, but tasted like it was. He named it after a chubby kid in overalls. He built a restaurant, then a few more. Then he let other people build them too. And for a while it worked. For a few decades, Big Boy was everywhere. Parking lots full of chrome and neon. Car hops on skates. Families in booths. The smell of burgers on a flat-top grill mixing with exhaust and summer air. Then the world changed. Speed beat quality. Efficiency beat experience. McDonald's figured out how to make burgers faster and cheaper and more consistent. And Big Boy, with its sit-down service and regional quirks and human-scaled operation, could not compete. The franchise model that built the empire became the thing that tore it apart. The regional operators went their own ways. Some rebranded, some closed. A few survived. And the network that once stretched coast to coast shrank to a handful of holdouts in the Midwest and California. But the burger lived on, in the Big Mac, in every double-decker that came after, in the idea that a burger could be more, that stacking worked, that the middle bun mattered. Big Boy invented that. And even though the restaurants faded, the innovation survived. Every chain that copied it, every burger joint that stacked patties and called it special. They were all speaking a language Bob Wien created. The statue became art. The fiberglass boy worth more than the burger he was holding. Collectors paid thousands, tens of thousands, for a piece of Americana, for a symbol of a time when things felt simpler, when a burger was an event and a restaurant was a landmark, and happiness was just a meal away. The memory became the product, not the burger, not the restaurant, the memory, the way it felt to be young and hungry and hopeful, to sit in a booth with people you loved, to eat a burger that was too tall and too messy and absolutely perfect. That memory tastes better than the burger ever did. And maybe that is the real legacy. Not what Big Boy was, but what it meant. We lost something when Big Boy faded. Not just a burger chain, a type of space, a third place where people gathered and connected and belonged, a long meal where no one rushed you, an intergenerational mixing ground where teenagers and grandparents and everyone in between shared the same counter, a piece of social infrastructure that held communities together in ways no one noticed until it was gone. What replaced it is faster, cheaper, more efficient, but not better, not richer, not more human. The drive-thru is not the car hop. The dollar menu is not the Big Boy Burger, and the strip mall is not the Googie Diner with the fiberglass boy standing guard. But a few locations survive. Frisch's in Ohio, Bob's in Burbank, a handful of others scattered across the Midwest. They are still there, still serving the burger, still standing. Not because the economics make sense, but because some things are worth keeping. Some memories are worth protecting. Some pieces of the past deserve to survive even when the world has moved on. And in Japan, of all places, Big Boy thrives. Over 200 locations. The burger adapted but recognizable. The mascot beloved. The restaurants packed. Japan took the idea and executed it with precision. With respect, with care. They proved the concept still works. That Big Boy could have survived in America if the franchises had maintained standards, if they had invested, if they had believed. So here we are. The empire is gone. The burger remains. In memory. in a few surviving restaurants, in every double-decker that borrowed the blueprint, in the fiberglass statues that collectors preserve like relics, in the stories people tell about car hops and parking lots, and that sauce they can never quite replicate at home. The Big Boy Burger did not change the world. It just fed it. For a while. In a way that mattered. And the people who remember are better for having known it, for having tasted it, for having lived in a time when a burger could be magic, and a statue could be a landmark, and a restaurant could be home. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. The neon still glows in Burbank. The statue still stands. The burger is still on the menu. And somewhere, someone is taking their first bite of a Big Boy Burger, compressing it with both hands, feeling the sauce squeeze out the sides, tasting beef and cheese and lettuce and bread all at once. And for a moment, they are connected to everyone who came before. To Bob Wheehan in 1936, to the families in the 50s, to the teenagers in the 60s, to you. The burger tastes good, not legendary, just good. But the moment is perfect. And that is what Big Boy always was. Not the best burger, just a good burger in a good place at a good time. And if you were lucky enough to be there, you know, you remember. And no Big Mac will ever quite measure up. Thank you for being here tonight, for listening, for remembering with me. If this brought back memories, I would love to hear them in the comments. What was your Big Boy? Where was it? Who were you with? What did it taste like? The stories matter. The memories matter. And sharing them keeps the whole thing alive. If you enjoyed this, consider liking and subscribing. It helps more than you know. And if you want to take these stories with you, we are on Spotify now. Link in the description. Same calm voice, same deep dives into the things we remember but rarely talk about. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And if you ever find yourself near a Big Boy, stop in. Order the burger, sit in a booth, and remember what it felt like when the world was younger and a double-decker burger was all you needed to feel like everything was going to be okay. Good night.